Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Tank Talk Podcast. I'm Jason. We got John here with us today, as always. Best podcast on the face of the earth. And today we have got a topic. Quite frankly, I don't want to talk about this. I don't. What are we talking about today?
The long working title that we have going right now is How Innovation Brought Down the Local Fish Store and Why It Shouldn't. I am quite intimidated by this topic, but we'll see.
I think we all are going to have some self-reflection here. And one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this today is there is a fish store in my area, in the Chicagoland area. If you're from around here, you will know this fish store. The name of the fish store is Tropiquatics. And I received a message a couple weeks ago that this fish store was closing. And it was heartbreaking to me because it is the fish store that is closest to where I live. And it has been around forever. I can remember visiting this store. It was slightly down the street when I first started going there, but probably at the age of 12, 13 years old, I would go there and it was awesome. And then it moved just right down the street. The original owner sold it to somebody else who did a great job. This would have probably been 6 to 8 years ago now, somewhere in there from what I can remember. And it was a guy that had worked there for a long time, and he took it over and he was making great strides. And I thought that fish store was definitely on the way up. He was doing a lot of smart things. And then I just get blindsided by this message. Hey, Tropiquatics is closing. If you want to get over there soon. And it was shocking to me. And then I started to think about, why would a store like that be closing? Now, I don't know. I haven't talked to the owner in a long time. I haven't even been in there in a while, which is kind of sad. But there's a lot of reasons why it could have happened. And maybe some of them are out of his control, or it's not really due to the industry. But I'm seeing more and more of this, where you've got these stores that have been around for a long time and they're closing. And I can't help but wonder, okay, well, why is that happening? And so, John, I'm going to start with you. I showed this before. Here's my outline. There's the notes that I took about the subject. And so we're going to go off of this. This is what we're going to be talking about today. So if you could go ahead and what's happening? What innovations have happened that have allowed fish stores to struggle?
Well, it's a difficult question for me to answer because I feel like I'm part of it. I feel like I have to feel that way because I own an online business where I sell aquarium products, which means I am a very convenient competitor for those local fish stores. I don't want to be. I go to great lengths to explain to everybody that will listen to me, go to your local fish store first. And if they don't have what you need, or if you just, for whatever reason, can't go to your local fish store, then come to me. But always give them a chance first. But I think that our community, our industry, has fallen to the same thing that is making a lot of industries fall, which is people convenience shopping from their couch or from the toilet or from their desk, and having everything accessible to us just at the push of a button. Very simple, very easy, and it'll be to your door in just a couple of days. And all of the options are out there. I think that the going to the store thing doesn't have the same appeal, no matter what we're talking about, whether it's, buying tools or buying toys or whatever it is. Going to the store, going to the restaurant, going to the movie theater, it doesn't have the same draw as it once did. It used to be an event. Put on your Sunday best, kids. We're going to Sears. Now it's kind of like, oh, we got to go to the store. I don't know. Maybe that's just the lazy man in me coming out, but I do think it's way too convenient. Everything is way too convenient now. And we simply don't have to go to the store. That's why.
I 100% agree. I was thinking about this the other day. I don't have that brain connection in my head anymore where I need something, let me leave and go get it. It doesn't exist in my head anymore. And I don't know when that happened, because when the online retailers first became a thing, it was like, order online. I'm not doing that. I'm going to go to the store. This is never going to catch on. That was a long time ago, obviously, but now it's completely flipped. And it's not just flipped for us. You mentioned, oh, maybe we're a little older. We just don't want to go out. My boys do the same thing. One is in college, the other one is in high school. I get packages that are showing, I'm like, I didn't order this. It doesn't even have my name on it. It's got one of it. So they've got their own online accounts, and it can be clothes, it can be workout supplements, it can be things they need for school, books, just random things. They would never think to go to a retail store to buy these things because it's a hassle. And unfortunately, the same thing is true with fish keeping, right? If I need a filter, if I need a light, my first thing is to go online, order the thing, and I don't have a problem waiting a day or two because online shipping has gotten so fast that we
Right.
pretty much expect, okay, if I order something, it's going to be here in a couple of days. So I do think one of the things that is the fish stores are feeling the pinch where I can carry all these dry goods. However, most people nowadays are probably just ordering that stuff online. They've got their favorite YouTube person they watch. If they've got an online retail store or somewhere else, and they're just like that. That's their default. That's what's going on in their brain. So in some ways, you take these local fish stores, whatever profit, and it can be profitable to to carry these things as long as the inventory is moving. But when you stock your shelves and you've got many, many thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars worth of inventory, and people aren't walking into the store anymore to buy that inventory because it's cheaper to get exactly what they want online, they don't want to go to the fish store and be like, okay, do they have the exact, like, because now people are picky, right? They see the reviews like, well, I want the Fluval 4.0. I want the AI blade. I'm not going to settle for when I walk into the fish store and they've got their brand that they're pushing because that's where, that's just what they're doing. I don't want that light. So it's a waste of time. So I'm just going to not even bother with that. I'd rather just buy it online.
Yeah, I have to tell you, I am the polar opposite of you. I order tons of stuff online. Don't misunderstand me. But if I have the option to go to the store, whether it's to buy a new tool or a new Superman figure, whatever it is, I'm going to take that 100 times out of 100. I give you a great example. I went shopping for shoes last week, and there is a small mom and pop shoe store in town here, about 10 minutes away from my house. Went in there, found the perfect pair of shoes. They didn't have my size. And even the lady working behind the counter was like, well, just order them online. I mean, we don't have them here for you. I said to her, and she was shocked. I said, well, I know you guys have another location. Do you have them at the other location? And the lady was like, are you saying you'll drive there to get it? I'm like, yeah, I would rather do that. I would rather physically touch them. And they didn't have them either. So I ended up going back the next day and buying a different pair. But, that's just the way I am. I want to have something in my hands. I want to see it. And even if, Lisa and I just replaced the light fixtures in my kitchen. Excuse me. I replaced them. Her and I chose them. But I went to Lowe's and I was basically like, whatever it is that they have, that's what I have to choose from. Now, in reality, if nothing there appealed to Lisa, we wouldn't have gone home with anything. But we were going to choose from what is there. And we found some and it worked out good. That's just the way I am. The very, very opposite of you. But, and I didn't mean that as a dig towards you. I'm just saying, I would rather go to the store. But there is the whole thing with sometimes I'm like, I don't feel like leaving the house. I like it here. I like pet my dogs and play with the cats. I don't want to go to the store. So I get it. I understand. And so because of that, the stores that are out there need to blow people's minds. And that's where it becomes really difficult.
Well, and keep in mind too, with the hard goods, and we've talked about this before, there is a suggested retail price, MAP pricing and all that. And as long as people are adhering to that, you're not getting you're almost never, I think it would be fair to say, we're strictly speaking about fish keeping. I can't envision a situation on hard goods where you're getting a better deal retail than you would online. I can see getting a better
No.
deal online because a lot of people don't have the overhead. They don't have a bunch of employees to pay in a separate building. A lot of people can do this in, you've got a situation that's outstanding where, it's on your property. So it's not like you have to rent retail space and all the stuff that goes along with that. So there's there's no incentive other than an altruistic incentive like, hey, I want to go and support this retailer, but you're probably going to spend a little extra money, which is fine. And I encourage people to do that as well. Otherwise you get the situation like we've got here with this fish store by me that's closing. But I also know I've walked into a lot of fish stores and it's like they've got a bunch of stuff and nothing I want in terms of dry goods, right? Because I'm very set. I'm like, okay, I know I love my Northfin foods and I like my AI lights and I like this filter and if they're not carrying that, well, that's a problem. But at the same time, I'm also a big believer in if you're a retail, and I have toured, especially this summer, literally dozens of fish stores between going to San Antonio and going to Colorado and up to Dorcon. I have been to a whole mess load, and it's amazing to me how many stores carry way too much product. Way, 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 way too much. Listen, guys, you don't need 16 types of dechlorinator. Find your favorite, stick with that brand, run that line. You only need that line. So all your water conditioners and all your water care stuff, find a brand, maybe two, not 16. I don't need to be overwhelmed with 47 choices. You want to sell filters? Find kind of like what you do online. You're not selling every type of filter,
Right.
and your cost down. Retailers do the same thing. Find the filters that work best for you, that make the most sense, that you truly believe in. That's your filter. So I want something else. You don't need to carry 77 different types of filters. Sizes, yeah, you have to have variety in sizes, but all the different brands, maybe not. And if you're an independent retailer, you just can't do that.
I think what happens is, and being one of my best friends is a owner of a very, very successful fish store. I think I can speak on this. I think that, and he's never said this to me. I'm just knowing him the way I do. I think I know the way he thinks. I think he's always looking at online as competition, and he's looking at it as, first of all, our community. You know this. We are very picky people. We decide Fritz Complete is what we like. If we go into the fish store, like we as consumers are like what you're saying the pet stores should be. I like this. I show up to your store and you don't have this. You have Prime. Well, guess what? I'm not buying my product because I want this. And so to be able to accommodate that customer, I have the API and I have the Complete and I have the Prime and the Fluval and all of the, I think that's why it happens. And, you show up to a fish store and they have the Marine Land hang on the back and the Seachem, but they don't have the AquaClear. Well, the AquaClear is the one I wanted, so I'm just not going to buy anything from you and I'm going to order it online. I think that stores that are successful are that's why they're doing it that way. And there's another thing to consider here, and being somebody that's in the business and been on both sides, online and retail, dry goods don't die. So you have to think about that too. And they require zero maintenance.
Yeah.
So the margins are nothing compared to what they are with livestock, but they don't die and they don't require employees constant attention and all of that kind of stuff. So there's also that.
Yeah, for sure. Now, so we talked about the dry goods side of things, but again, I'm looking at the innovation that has really kind of changed fish keeping. And we kind of mentioned this in a different podcast recording, but there are certain types of livestock that I think fish stores are going to have problems with. And I think the two that we mentioned were shrimp, snails, and plants.
Yep.
For the most part, it was social media that made those three components of fish keeping popular. So the social media was first. Retailers then jumped on it, and I've seen a lot of retailers try to up their game in terms of plants and invertebrates, but there is very little mechanism for them to take up retail space and compete efficiently because, as you know, with plants and a lot of the livestock, and I've dealt a lot with importing. We'll get to that in a second, but there, pretty much everybody is the root, the base of where you're getting your plants from is pretty much all the same. And then the plants they can make a stop at a wholesaler, and then they can go to a pet store. But when you've got people who are selling plants online, sometimes they just go directly to the source, right? And they can skip the wholesaler, and they don't have the retail overhead, and they're just growing them. And then they're just selling what has grown. They're not even selling what they bought. They're selling the plants that have grown. That's the crazy thing about plants. You get more plants for free, and they're just selling those. Now, an individual doing that, no big deal. When you start having hundreds or thousands of people doing that and making it really accessible online via Marketplace or Aquabid or online retailers like yourself, you got a heck of a problem. At that point, I don't see how the retailers compete selling plants unless somebody just doesn't want to take a chance and buy plants online.
Yeah, and you know what? The majority of people that go into fish stores aren't looking for plants anyway. They're looking specifically for fish. Yeah. So it is tough. I mean, I mentioned it in last week's podcast. Like, I don't understand why fish stores don't have 12 tanks committed to nothing but plants, but that's coming from the perspective of a plant retailer. So of course I would think that they would want to do that, but I can understand why they don't. You could have, 6 Rotala rotundifolia plants in that one tank, or you could have 18 Cardinal Tetras, which are going to sell like that. Yes. So it's like, it's a tough one. It surprises me that you don't see more plants in pet stores, but it is what it is. They're easy to keep. They don't require constant maintenance. I don't know. I feel like stores should have more of them. Shrimp, they do require that. They don't require it, but you're going to want them to be in a tank by themselves so that they can reproduce and provide you with free product to sell and not get eaten by the other fish that are in there. Do they want to commit the space to that? It's kind of like almost every single fish store in America doesn't have a dedicated system for bettas, or like smart people say, like you, bettas. They keep them in the cups because it's not worth investing in the huge systems to keep them in there. I don't even know where I'm going with that, but I understand why it's happening, but I also don't, because they're such big sellers, shrimp and snails and plants.
Yeah. Well, I think you only have so much retail space, and you have to figure out, you have to maximize every square inch of the store. And quite frankly, there are a lot of fish stores who don't understand that, right? They're old school. They've been in business for 30 years. And these are the ones sometimes that struggle and don't realize that every square inch of your store needs to be turning a profit. And if you misutilize that space by carrying way too many dry goods or carrying the fish store that closed, one of the things that I was always amazed by is they had an entire section that was dedicated to people who had old fish tanks that brought them there, and they were trying to sell old used fish tanks. And I'm like, you're using a lot of space for this. So let's say you've got a 200-gallon tank there, and somebody said, hey, I don't want this anymore. And maybe let's just say they gave it to you, and you've got the stand and the tank, and you're trying to sell it for $300, and it sits there for months, because it's half the time there was crusty, hard water stains all over it. So it's not exactly something where someone's like, oh, this is awesome, right? They're worried, okay, it's a used tank. Does it hold water? Yeah, it holds water, but you're a little worried. So you've got a 6 foot by 2 foot space plus this place that you have to walk around the tank dedicated to this used piece of crap that now you have to, and they probably didn't give it to you, but let's say you make $400 off of it. There's a lot better ways to use that space than that. So getting back to what you're saying with the plants, the shrimp, and the snail, I do not see, again, unless somebody just doesn't want to order online or off of one of the other sites, why a pet store would bother trying to compete, because the pet stores are not growing, generally speaking, not growing plants and then selling basically free plants. That's what's happening all over the internet. People are making 100% profit sometimes on what they sell, 100%. And online retailers who are skipping the wholesale process, which is a lot of them, they're much, much better off. They can make the same profit that a retailer can make, but sell them at a lot cheaper. And that's the beauty of online, but it's also the problem that the retailers have to face, right? And the same shrimp around us, you want cherry shrimp, they're less than $1 a piece. I see people selling 20 cherry shrimp for $10 at Swaps, which we have to get into next. But they're just here's a whole bag. I've got so many of these things I don't know what to do with them. So it can be a real challenge when it comes to the inverts and the plants.
This is why I was saying before, and I'm going to use my buddy Mark as an example. You have to blow people's minds.
Yes.
You have to, as a pet store, to not fall to the online competitors. You have to blow people's minds. He does that by having a two-toed sloth in his store and having these African squirrels that are absolutely amazing, having display tanks that would rival some public aquariums. It's that spectacle. It's getting people in there. Going to his store is an experience.
Yeah.
And he does sell a lot of, he doesn't sell used tanks. That I agree. That's when there's a Facebook marketplace out there, why would you do that? Like that's just bad business. But he does sell new tanks, but he also has a 10,000 square foot store.
Right.
So most fish stores are going to be, 12, 13, 1,400 square feet. To commit space like that to, a couple of 75 gallons and some 29s, your favorite tank, I don't know why they would do that. I mean, that just doesn't make sense. All the money's in fish, and there's money in plants too. So I don't understand why they just concede to people like me, even though it puts more money in my pocket. I don't understand why they don't sell more plants, but they could pay the same amount for plants that I do, but they choose not to.
The other innovation, I think probably the number one thing, and this is where, you were talking about you having an online store and me being the importer or selling imported fish. And that is, I think about some of these fish stores closing. It is now 100% impossible to compete in areas where there are fish swaps. There is no way you're competing on price, and most times on health of fish when you have these fish swaps. And before you say, well, that's not a big deal, it's a huge deal. So let me throw some numbers out there for everybody so you can get an idea of the magnitude, the impact that this has had. In the last 5 years, certainly, in the Chicagoland area, there are, let's go Chicagoland, southern Wisconsin, in that general area. There are now 6 Greater Chicago Cichlid Association swaps throughout the year. Each one of those swaps brings in around 800 people, all with money to burn. Nobody is showing up to a swap without money because there's no point in going. Right? What's the point? It's not a mall. You're not just going, let's just go to the swap and walk around. Everybody's spending. So that's 6. So it's once every other month. That's 800 people. Greenwater Aquarium Society has 10 swaps a year. That's almost every month. They take a month off in the summer and one off in, I think, December. Smaller, but that's still usually around 300 people, sometimes more. Quad Cities, which is right across the river, runs 5 or 6 a year. That swap is massive. Easily 2,000 to 3,000 people walk through there. Milwaukee Aquarium Society has a swap just over the Illinois border. They run 3 or 4 a year. They're actually building out even more space, bigger spot. All these places are trying to find more room. They run 700-800 people through there every single time. There's one in Peoria. There's Indianapolis. My point here, I want you to think, for most people, how often they actually go to a fish store. Like just in the course of a year, how many times are you stopping by? Is it once a month? Is it once every couple months? Like the average person. Yeah, there are people who go every single week, but for the most part, you might, especially as your tanks get established, once every couple of months. Well, guess what? You now have the swaps available. Pretty much there's absolutely one every single month throughout the entire year. And you're bringing in hundreds, if not thousands of customers. All of those people used to buy 20 years ago, they were buying from pet stores. They're not anymore. And the reason why is, again, efficiency. This cat is out of the bag. I'm not selling fish anymore, so I just stopped doing that. Not because I was worried about the fish stores necessarily, but because it was a lot of work. But you have to understand what's happened also with the swaps is it used to be, okay, people are just breeding fish. And so they're just selling the fish that they breed. That was fine. And that was happening even up to about 8 years ago, 6 years ago, maybe, where it was just mostly people who are breeding fish. So that limited the fish availability, where it's like, okay, you've got people who are breeding. So you got a lot of cichlids, you got a lot of live bears, maybe some cory cats, but it was very limited. Guess what? That changed. I was part of that change, but I'm not the only one. Now everybody's doing it, where you're seeing well over half your vendors there are now importing. So they're skipping the wholesaler, they're skipping the retailer, they're skipping the wholesaler, they're going direct importing. And what they can do is they can bring these fish in. And if they're doing the right thing like we were, we're quarantining the fish for 4 weeks. There isn't a pet store on the face of this earth that's going to be able to compete with that efficiently. I got zero overhead. I got a fish room in my home, as well as everybody else at these swaps, and they can bring these in and at least hopefully if they're doing the right thing quarantine them for a couple of weeks. And so a lot of the weak fish are getting kind of called out of that situation, and because they have no retail overhead, they have no employees to pay, the stuff is probably in their house, they went import, not wholesale. They're crushing the local fish stores, and that is never going to change. And what we've discovered in that, it's both sad, but it's also really great for the end consumer, and that is way, way, way cheaper fish that are much healthier than what retail has traditionally provided. And I do think that is the one area where, at least online, fish stores should not have to worry about online retailers, but these swaps have a much greater impact than I think most people realize.
Well, there's no debate that it's having a huge impact, but let me give the other side to that argument. You live in the greater Chicagoland area. What is there? Probably 30 million people that live in that area?
Probably 12. Yeah, 12 million,
Well,
something like that,
12 is a
including the
lot.
suburbs. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. But it's
I,
also a huge market.
right. But what I'm getting at is I'm still a firm believer, even though, you were talking about 800 or so people come through. One of them you said was in multiple thousand people coming through the doors. That is but a small fraction of the people out there that have aquariums. My argument is most people that are in this hobby are not hardcore, crazy, fanatical fish keepers like we are that'll go to swaps. These people don't even know that such thing exists. They would look at it as those are weirdos, like the people that would go to Comic-Con and stuff like that. I'm not fooling with that. I just have an aquarium in my living room because it's cute and the kids like it. I need to get a few more fish. They wouldn't even entertain the idea, wouldn't even know that a swap was out there. And I do believe that the bulk of the people that have aquariums are those people. And so those people, they're going to want convenience or they're going to want their mind blown. And so they're going to choose. And I don't even think those people would consider online to be an option. I think they would look at it. I go to the fish store, I pay $4 a piece. I walk out the door, I paid $12. I got 4 fish or 3 fish instead of, I order them online and pay $36 for shipping. I feel like the bulk of this hobby is people that would never entertain the idea of going to swaps. But having said that, I do understand that the hardcore fish keepers are the ones that are spending the majority of the money. So we do want them too. So, but I don't think, I don't think I could go with the argument that swaps are what is putting fish stores out of the business.
So, and I'm glad you made that point, because I was going to make that point as well. And that is, they may not make up the largest percentage of fish keepers, but they make up the most important percentage. Because if you think about this, just think about the math for a second. If you've got 2,000 people, which is a very realistic estimate at a Quad City, and those 2,000 people now have over 100 vendors that they're dealing with, plants, shrimp, fish, everything, mostly fish. It is not uncommon for those 2,000 people to easily, and I mean easily, spend between $200 and $400 per person at
Whoa.
those swaps. Start doing the math. There is no way you can't tell me that throughout the entire all the fish stores in northern Illinois, that's one swap. One. And I think it's a very conservative estimate that they're spending between $200 and $400 per swap per person, and it's happening at every single swap. Do the math. You're talking about millions of dollars at these fish stores. These are small mom and pop fish stores. They can't. That's an incredible amount of money that they're losing out on, and in a sense, it's partially their fault. I mean, I don't know how else to say it and not be sound mean, but when you are, some fish stores, not all, but some are stuck in 1970. You're bringing in fish on a Tuesday. You're selling them out of your tanks on Tuesday afternoon. They're sick because they came from a wholesaler. And I am convinced the more stops a fish makes, the higher the likelihood. I'm telling you right now, ick is not a thing in imported fish. I've imported tens of thousands of fish. I've had one tank, from my recollection, get ick upon import. One.
Wow.
You tell me how often you're going to get ick from a pet store. From some pet stores, it's almost a guarantee because the ick and a lot of these diseases are being magnified when you go wholesale and then pet store. And it's on them. Because if they were quarantining their fish, you'd have a better experience. So at least they could say, hey, I know when I go to XYZ pet store, I'm at least getting healthy fish. Yeah, I got to pay a little bit more, but that's okay. No, it's the opposite. I can go to a swap, pay half as much for fish, and get way healthier fish. Tell me where the advantage is, right? And here's the other thing. The retailers can't even win on the types of inventory and the variety. You're getting crushed there too because the swaps, you walk into a swap these days with all these people importing all these crazy fish, 9 times out of 10, you're going to go to a swap and see things that you've never seen at a fish store. They can't compete on any level. But like you keep saying, there's hope. Because what is the hope for the local fish store if they're going to get creamed on price?
Regulars and new fish keepers.
And make it an experience.
Oh, yeah.
Right? That's what your buddy's doing. That's what Mark is doing. That's what, when I walked, you've been there too, Fish Gallery in northern Dallas.
Oh, yeah.
You walk in there, you want to go there. They've got massive display tanks and you can walk around there and the kids are loving it. And yeah, their fish are a little bit more, but their tanks are in great shape. Their store is temperature controlled properly. And it's just a nice upscale experience. And then you see the fish are pretty healthy and hopefully they stay that way. You're okay with spending a little bit more to get the fish now and have the experience, right? And hopefully really, really good customer service. But if you don't have those things, the stores are going to die. Those old 1970s style stores, unless they've got super healthy fish at a reasonable price, it's over.
I've been in fish stores before, not recently, but I've been in fish stores before where I've walked in and I've just been like, I don't know how they do it. Yeah. I don't know how they're still in business because you summed it up great in saying the 1970s stores. It's like, it looks like these tanks were set up in the 70s and they haven't been touched since. Like terrible, dirty, it stinks, it's hot. Like, how is this place even in business? But I'll tell you, and I'm really, when I talk about that, I'm talking about one store in particular, and I don't want to say its name, but I don't even think they're in business anymore. But the other thing that gives hope, and this was surprising, I actually had Mark on this podcast before you came along. You were already born, but I'm saying you weren't on this podcast with me. I had Mark on as a guest. I interviewed him at his store, and I asked him a question that surprised me. I said, how many, because I thought his answer was going to be never. How many people walk into your store, or how often does it happen where a person comes into your store and buys a complete setup? Like they're brand new, and they come in and buy everything. What do you think his response was?
Oh, I don't even know. I mean, I would think that'd be far more common at a Petco and PetSmart, but not nearly as common at a privately owned fish store.
I would have thought the exact same thing. He said every single day, if not multiple times per day.
Nice. Good.
And I was like, whoa, like that surprised me. And I've been to his store 100 times and I've seen people buying tanks there. He's not lying. I mean, it does happen. And, he sells everything from aquascaping supplies to the tanks and stands and lids and all of it. So they're capable of getting the entire setup there. But that surprised me because I thought the same thing you did. They're going to go to Petco and PetSmart, get the cheaper stuff, and then they're going to come back and they're going to get their fish from him. But now he said it's every day. That's happening all the time. And he does, because he has 10,000 square feet, he has tanks and even when I was there last weekend, he had a 210, I think it was. Like, he's got some big ones in there too.
Yeah.
That completely surprised me. I think most fish stores should not have that, but he has that as, people can come in and do that. They have the staff that is going to be over the top friendly and smart and helping them out. He's doing it right. And I don't mean to just keep talking about him, but he's a dear friend of mine. And so of course, and I admire him and what he does. So I'm going to dote on him a lot, but, he's an example, and Fish Gallery is another great example of doing it right. Making that a destination that people want to go to.
Yeah.
And if you don't do that, I don't know that there is any hope because of people like me.
Yeah. Well, and here's the other thing too. You'd mentioned, okay, well, Chicago's a big market. Yeah. Well, that's why we got so many swaps, but all the big markets have swaps. All the big markets have clubs. I speak at a lot of these clubs, so I have a pretty decent knowledge of these different clubs. I mean, you've got multiple in the state of Florida, multiple in the state of Texas. You've got them in Minneapolis. You've got everywhere. So everywhere where there's a major market, you have these fish clubs, and everywhere where there's fish, most of the places that have fish clubs are at least running a couple swaps a year, in addition to possibly some auctions, and all of them run after the meeting auctions. This is all eating into the local fish store that are in those major metropolitan areas. Because let's face it, there really aren't mom and pop fish stores in places that are in the middle of nowhere, right? Like you live in a more rural area. Where's Joe's Fish? They don't exist. Why? Because there's no customers there. Just like there's no fish clubs there. But where there is a strong customer base, there will also be these fish clubs that lead to fish swaps and auctions. And so, like you said, in order for the fish stores to be able to survive, the innovation that we're really talking about is mostly online, right? And so online has changed not just fish stores, but everything. But then online has also made it far more popular to know, okay, there's a fish club in my area, because people like me talk about them all the time. There's a ton of people, you've got Ryan's fish tanks out there and Grant and Shelby. The fish clubs out there in Florida are outstanding. You've got people in Texas talking about theirs. And so everywhere where you have content creators, you also have people talking about, wow, I just went to the fish club. And so I don't think once people go down the YouTube route, it's only a matter of time before they realize, oh, there's this thing called a fish club. What is that about? Right? I don't think it's not as hidden as it was 12 years ago when nobody was talking about them online. And now you're only in it for a certain amount of time before you recognize, oh, there's something going on here. I think that's why they've become so popular. The fish swaps that we used to do, even when I first started selling, they didn't run nearly as often. Greenwater only ran like 4 a year plus a couple auctions. GCCA might have been 4 a year. Quad, I think, was maybe 2 or 3, which I didn't even go to. But they've all realized, holy cow, there is a lot of money in these things. And the vendors all realize, if I can import fish and I can keep them healthy and I can offer you a wide variety and I can do it inexpensively, I'm going to sell all day long, right? The reason why we stopped selling is not because it wasn't worthwhile to go. It's just that when I'm spending 22 out of 52 weeks a year prepping for these things and all of the work that goes into it outside of just going to the swap, I just didn't want to do it anymore. I didn't have it. And plus, our Eli is graduating college early. And so that means we're losing some of our bag help. And Joanne and I are not, if we wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, can only bag half as many fish. It's just, you start doing the math, like, this isn't making sense, So
there ain't a whole lot of things. It better be a funeral or somebody better be on their way to the hospital to get me up at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
I ain't bagging up no fish at 3 o'clock in the morning. So I don't blame you at all. I keep wanting to say this and I don't know how to say it because I don't know how to say it without sounding like a jerk. So I'm just going to say it and sound like a jerk. There's nothing we can do about that.
No.
The swaps and the online retailers, There's nothing that can be done to stop that. And I don't think anybody wants to stop that.
No.
So the only resolution to this problem is for those stores to stand out and to make it a destination. And the unfortunate thing is, I will definitely not be naming names, but I wanted I wanted to start this little personal crusade. And I talked to you about it. It was a while back. It turned out to be a big bust. It just would not work. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to travel around as a creator that has a little bit of influence. I wanted to travel around and be able to go to fish stores and help them to get through exactly what you and I are talking about right here. And I thought that my experience of failing at a fish store and also running a decent online store that I'm running now, I thought I had the kind of experience where I could have some good information to give to these people. And I started talking with manufacturers, and like I started getting a lot of backing behind me that were ready to help out with these things. And it was great. The problem was I couldn't find any fish stores that were willing to take any kind of advice.
Yeah.
I couldn't find any that were open to the idea of them even needing help, including one that I went to that was exactly what you just described, in the middle of nowhere. Like, I don't even know why you have a fish store here. This is ridiculous. Not interested. Not interested in some flashy YouTuber helping out. So I'm afraid that not only is there nothing that can be done about online and about the swaps, I think a lot of the owners are resistant to do anything about it anyway. So it's almost, I don't mean to be doom and gloom, but you know, it's survival of the fittest, and the fittest know who they are. They're going to do the things like Mark, like, I'm sorry, whoever the owner of Fish Gallery is. There's another store that you and I went to that was outstanding, that I don't remember where it was. It was all of us. A whole bunch of us went there. It was in a shopping plaza. It was so nice and huge.
Oh, yeah.
You know, there's a
Yes.
lot of stores that are doing it right, but the ones that aren't, I feel terrible because I don't want to see them go down. But I mean, I think a lot of them, they don't want to change anything.
And it's one of the things too, again, just this summer alone, I've been in a lot of different markets, a ton of different fish stores. And if you look at our channel, I'll have another tour coming out here soon. I've only filmed in like 3 or 4 places. And the reason was the dozens of other places I walked into, they were not special. You walk in, it's hot, it's dirty. I'm looking at the tanks. I'm like, a lot of these fish don't look that good. They should have been quarantined. The prices that you're asking, retail, I have a really good feel for what these fish, as they go through the supply chain, what they cost. And I'm like, you've got these people and you're like, that's a $30 for a peacock gudgeon. I'm like, on no planet is that fish worth $30 when I can go to a swap and sell them for $5, right? And then they wonder why they're getting absolutely destroyed. I'm like, because you don't have a $30 fish there. If you would have sold it for $12, you still would have been making money. And guess what? You would have had a customer, but you want to sell them for 30, thinking you've got something. And then, you know, and I watch the price, the retail prices around here, and I'm floored. I'm floored by what they do. They've got the multis that they're trying to sell for $20. I'm like, that's in this market, it's $3 fish, dude. That's why you're struggling, because people have figured it out. So be special. You know, the boutiques, the fish store boutiques that are now focusing on nano, focusing on plants. And yeah, they do have some shrimp, and it's a real nice experience. Those are doing pretty well. One thing we didn't mention where fish stores could really improve is on education and community. I still don't know why. Why is it that a fish store doesn't have a schedule of events that they're running if they've got the retail space for it? So instead of selling those stupid tanks that were used and crusty and, you know, $300 or $400, why don't you take that space? And I've mentioned this to fish store owners before. They don't think about this, but you could have built a loyal customer base by saying, hey, once every couple of weeks, we're going to be open after hours and we're going to have a speaker come in, and it's going to cost me a few $100s, or maybe I can focus on local and get some local experts in here. We're going to do a presentation, and then it's going to be 20% off something, right? Or we're going to run a special. Almost nobody does that. We're going to show you how to aquascape a tank. We're going to show you how to use some of the products that we get the best markups on, and we're going to show you how we use those in think, man. So, but they don't do that.
I give you a great example because this just happened 2 weeks ago of exactly what you're talking about. Again, I got a dote on Mark and Donnie. Uh, Aquariums Unlimited in Virginia Beach had a 10-year anniversary event at their store. They brought in, I don't know, because we got there late because Lisa, but we still got there at like noon. Exactly. I mean, it is what it is. People ask me, oh, when are you going to be there? Ask her. She'll tell you. But anyway, they had food there. They had vendors there. There was a rep from Fluval, Aquatop, Seachem, Seache, Fritz, Brightwell. I mean, there was a lot of brands that were there. I'm not in the business of, giving away Mark's numbers, but Mark and Donnie, the owners of the store, good friends of mine, we went out to dinner afterwards, and Lisa and I sat with Donnie, and he was just like exhausted. And I'm like, so how was the day? He said it was the best day we've ever had in the history of our store. And because we're friends, he shared with me the total revenue from that day. And I'm just going to tell you, Lisa and I make a living here. We're not rich people, but we do okay. The amount that he made in one day, they made, gross in one day, was what my website makes in about 2 months. I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah.
I'm telling you the truth here.
So imagine that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, you do those special things like you're talking about, and you have yourself a doozy of a day. And I was so happy for them because they deserve it. They're awesome.
Yeah. And when you look outside of the fish keeping, so I'm a big Harley guy. Nobody does this better than Harley, in my opinion, where the independent dealers will they'll do a bike night. So, hey, Wednesday night, you come right over. We're going to have food. We're going to have bands. We're going to have all this stuff. Now, sometimes you got, it's a food truck. You might have to pay for the food, but they got the bands, they got stunt shows and all this stuff. But they leave the retail store open. Obviously, the place is packed. You go to a Harley dealer on a normal Wednesday night, there might be a half dozen people. And you go there on a bike night, hundreds. And guess what they've got? They've got their shirt draped over for $40. They've got their mug. There's a reason why they do this, and they're promoting the brand, and they're building goodwill, right? They'll do, hey, free hot dogs in the parking lot this Saturday from 2 to 3, and come see the vendors. Why do they do that? Because they're building a connection, and the fish industry has not figured this out, and it drives me. Fish stores have not figured this out, and it drives me absolutely crazy that they don't do exactly what you're saying. It doesn't have to be that involved. You can literally just have someone do a presentation. Maybe you've got 10 people there. Maybe it's 12. But the more you do it, the more people know, hey, this is the place to be. The second Friday, almost like a fish club, second Friday, head to so-and-so pet store. There's going to be a demo there. There's going to be a couple vendors there. There's going to be, this is the place to get a discount on that night for certain things. It'll work.
Can we address the elephant in the room, though? Can we address the thing that you do not want me to bring up right now?
I don't know what I don't want you to bring up, but bring it up.
The thing. It is the biggest contender and the thing that is putting the biggest hurt on fish stores. My nemesis, Amazon. You can't argue with me on that.
I included Amazon. I didn't want to say the word because I know it triggers you. So I wasn't going to say it. That's why I kept saying online retailers. But in my head, every time I say online retailer, it's obvious that Amazon is the king of that. You could put all other online retailers, combine them together, and not even get low single-digit percentages of what they sell. But it doesn't matter if it's Amazon, if it's keepfishkeeping.com, if it's Pet Supplies Plus, online, bulk reef supply. It's all the same in terms of being able to optimize. Now, Amazon, I recognize that you've got other issues with that in terms of MAP pricing, and sometimes the people buying in bulk and then undercutting everybody, including other online retailers, which is a problem. I'll grant you that. But that ship sailed 15 years ago, right? So, and that's why I said at the beginning, I don't know why not not necessarily the fish stores that you deal with, but in general, a lot of fish stores. Again, I've seen so many this summer. Like, what are you doing with all of these dry goods and all these? And there's so many off brands. That's the thing. It's not like, oh, I've got Seachem API Fritz. Okay, that's cool. Like you had mentioned before, I totally understand that. But when you've got Seachem API Fritz, and then you've got 6 off brands that nobody's ever heard of, that you probably just got a great deal on from somebody on Amazon, you're like,
Right.
I got contact. I'll just bring this garbage water in and sell it as whatever water conditioner. You can't compete with that.
That's true. And I mean, and I didn't bring up Amazon to start a fight or anything, but when you were talking, I don't know why I do this, but when you refer to online retailers, I kind of look at that as like me and the co-op and Flip Aquatics and Dustin and Eater and like the community kind of online retailers. I don't put Amazon and Walmart and stuff like
Your
that in that same
corporate
category.
online.
Right,
Yeah.
the mega places, they're on a different level than any of us are. But the other thing, and we're coming up on that hour, which is surprising. I was nervous about this one. The other thing that I definitely think fish stores don't do enough of is promoting themselves on social media.
For sure, 100%. That was going to be the next thing I was going to say. If you're going to compete online, be online.
Yeah, I
And
mean, at
that's
least people know that you're there. But you've alluded to so many times the 70s style fish store. A lot of these stores are owned by generations older than us, and we're old fuddy duddies, you and I, but they're even older than we are, and they're not into I don't want to mess with that whole thing. It's just a fad. It's like, okay, well, they're going to leave you in the dust if you don't.
they already have.
And well, yeah, that's true.
Yep. I mean, every single local fish store should have an online shop. That should go without saying. That should be a no-brainer for your hard goods. I'm not saying you have to ship fish if you don't want to, but every single one should have that option. Order it online, pick up later, or if you want to do straight online orders, certainly promotion. I mean, if you've got, my gosh, I mean, I'm sitting here with 30 tanks, and I've always got something to film in some of these tanks, and you're a fish store that's constantly bringing in new fish every single week. You've got unlimited content there, right? Use it. Share. Hey, we just got these fish in, and we're going to quarantine them. We're going to quarantine them for a week or two, which I think is a massive miss, and it's going to have to switch because they're going to get. I keep saying this. They're going to get crushed by fish retailers that are online that are quarantining and promoting that, as well as everybody at the swaps who are promoting that. You got to sell healthy fish. They can be more expensive. People will accept that usually, as long as it's not $30 peacock gudgeon that can be bought for $5 at a swap. But if you're in the realm, you're within 10, 15, even in some cases 20%, that as long as your fish are healthy and you've got that vibe, you could probably make that work. But yeah, you're right, man. They should be all over the place.
I just think that so many of them rely on those new fish keepers that, dare I say, don't know any better.
Yeah.
They don't know that they can get a better deal. They don't know. They're buying on impulse, and they're going to pay $30 for that gudgeon, and it just is what it is. That's just what it costs, and they're not really price shopping and all of that. And I guess the bright side of that is those people are never going to stop being a thing. This is a hobby that is up and down, up and down. There's a constant flow of people out and a constant flow of people in. And as long as those people are around, there's hope. But I still think stores, in order to not get shut down by all of the online retailers and the swaps and all of that, they need to stand out, and they need to be doing things to make the people want to leave their house. People don't even want to leave their house to get McDonald's anymore. They got DoorDash, to just get them out of the house. I don't care if it's putting Dippin' Dots in your store, doing something to cater to bring people into the store. It has to be done because destination locations are just few and far between anymore. There's not a lot of weirdos like me that really want to get up and go and be there to purchase something in person. Most people just want to do it online, and thank God for it, because that's how I make my living. But as far as my personal shopping habits, I'd rather go get it, but that's just me.
Well, and the thing is, fish stores, pet stores are uniquely situated in the sense that almost all people would rather go see live animals, right? That's exciting. That's why we have zoos and public aquariums. And so it's the one retail area where you should be able to drive traffic for those who are interested in your product. You don't need to go see a pair of blue jeans. It's like, all right, if I know the size that fits me, I'll take a chance and order those online. And if they don't fit, I'll send them back. Motorcycle parts. I don't need to go see the part. Half the time they don't have that part. I'm going to order it online. But live animals, it's exciting. And especially if you've got kids, it's exciting. They have every reason to want to leave the house and go. When my kids were small, and I said, hey guys, let's go to Tropiquatics. Let's go here. Let's to a pet store. They're like, yeah, they got all excited. Let's go. Man, they were dressed before I was, but if I said, hey, let's go check out the new vacuums over there at the Lowe's, I'm not going anywhere. You have
Do
fun.
we have to?
Yeah. So they have a advantage. They're just not taking advantage. They're just not optimizing it.
Well, and the last thing that I'll have to add to this is kind of going back to what we were talking about before. I've been to a lot of fish stores that are in the worst locations.
Oh yeah.
And it's not that they're in a bad neighborhood. That's not necessarily what I mean, but they're out of the way from everything else. The most successful fish stores that I've seen have all been in very dense areas that are very convenient. Maybe not Fish Gallery. That was kind of sitting on its own.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so many of them that are doing well are in shopping centers and, plazas and things like that. Getting those people that are driving by to go to GNC to get their protein shakes, and they see that and they're like, oh, let me stop in there. I don't know. I mean, walk-in traffic is important. I don't care who you are in retail. And some of these that are out in the middle of nowhere, but I mean, you don't see that in the greater Chicagoland area, but here we see that pretty regularly.
Oh, no, there's a couple. In fact, a couple of my favorites. One of them is kind of stuck on a corner somewhere with barely any parking. And the other one, which is kind of an offshoot of that, is in the middle of an industrial park. And I was just at one. I'll have the fish store tour out probably in a week or so. But I didn't even think we were in the right place because it was in the middle of, how when you have like the dual, like big industrial buildings and there's docks on each side and you got a fence you got to go through and the semis are backing up into the docks. That was what we were in. I'm like, can we even park our car here? And sure enough, Luke's like, no, Dad, the store name is right there on that 407A thing. And I'm like, huh? And then it was the weirdest thing. It actually was a really cool place, but they need serious help with being able to just people, when you walk in, it was like, okay, I basically just walked into a front office. There was a couple of display tanks, nobody there. And then there was a door to the warehouse with a bunch of tanks, but I was like, can we even go in here? No, like the dock door was open. And sure enough, you walk in and it was gorgeous. I mean, you're going to see the most amazing aquascape tanks and really great fish. But it was like, yeah, another one of those places where it felt like it was in the middle of an industrial park. Like you're not taking your family there most of the time, even though it was an awesome place. I questioned the location and the convenience.
Whether people would even know it's an awesome place because they won't even make it in the front door because it looks too intimidating.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Do you have any other ways in which innovation has really put a hurting on local fish stores?
I don't know. I think I've had enough doom and gloom for the day.
I think I have too. And we don't want to sound like super negative. The good fish stores are going to survive just fine as long as they focus on healthy fish, bringing the experience like John keeps saying, and making it a good experience for everybody, both when they're there and when they come home with their livestock, hard goods, all that kind of stuff. So would love to hear from you as always. What do you think it's going to take? What's going to make those local fish stores be able to survive the online and the swaps and all that other stuff? As always, thank you so much for being here. Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you next week.